Hello children, today we will continue with the chapter Synopsis-The Swiss Family Robinson. First, we will have a recap of that part of the story that we covered in the last video. There was this family of 6 who were traveling on a ship that was caught up in a storm. Everyone else was evacuated, but they were still stuck on the ship. So, somehow, they reached an island and started building up their life by first making a tent and then a safer tree house. The mother started growing plants, and then for the winter they made a cave house of their own. So children, let's understand what other innovative things they built in the next part of the story. Let's start reading. Because of the low light, the cave house they had built felt oppressive. To remedy this, Father and Jack rigged up a new light. They found a bamboo pole that would reach from the floor to the ceiling. Then, after securing it, Jack climbed to the top of the pole and hung a large oil lamp that they had rescued from the ship. One day, they found that one of the family's huts had been completely destroyed, and the cultivated fields around it had been trampled and ruined. There were huge footmarks everywhere. Father saw massive damage to trees as well as many huge footprints which he identified as belonging to an elephant herd. The next morning, the family began to design a new defense to discourage all wild animals from entering their cultivated lands. They also finalized their ideas about the new residence. Rather than building a house on stilts, which the elephants could knock down easily, they would use 4 strong trees growing in a square near one another as the foundation. The trees were of equal size, approximately 12 feet apart. Thus, they built another safe home. So children, I'll start with the explanation. So, the cave house that they had built had low light, because of which the room felt very dark. So, in order to fix this, Father and Jack made provision for some more light. So, they took a bamboo which reached from the floor to the ceiling. Then they fixed it properly, and Jack climbed the bamboo pole and hung a large oil lamp that they had got from the ship. One day, they found out that their hut was completely destroyed, and the crops that they cultivated were also crushed. They saw there were huge footprints everywhere. So the father identified that these footprints belonged to a group of elephants. So next morning, the family decided to make a fence so that animals could not enter the cultivated land. And they also thought of a new house which would be much more stronger. So instead of building their house on stilts, stilts are long pieces of wood that is used to support buildings so that it is above the ground or water. So they would use 4 strong trees growing in a square near one another as the foundation. So in this way, they build another safe home. So children, Let's read the further part of the story. 10 years passed, and the young boys were now young men, and their parents were very proud. They called the island New Switzerland. Many adventures occurred over the years. On the shore of another island, Fritz had knocked down an albatross which was threatening to attack him, and found a rag tied to the large bird's leg. On the rag was a message that an English woman had been stranded on the smoking rock. Fritz had no idea how old the message was. His father suggested that smoking rock sounded like a reference to a volcano. Since there were no volcanoes in the vicinity, the bird might have come from hundreds of miles away. However, Fritz felt that someone needed his help, and he was determined to do his best to find the sender. Before returning home, he had written his own note on the rag, retied it to the albatross's leg, and had watched the bird fly off. The note told whoever received it, "Do not despair. Help is near." Fritz then successfully rescued the young woman, Jenny Montrose. Though shy at first, soon she got used to living with the Robinson family. So children, I'll start with the explanation now. So now 10 years had passed, and the young boys had now grown out to be young men. Their parents were very proud of them. They named the island New Switzerland. Children, in these 10 years, they had many more adventures. Fritz had hit an albatross. Albatross is a large oceanic bird in the shore of another island. That bird was threatening to attack him. Fritz found a rag tied to the leg of the bird. Rag is a piece of cloth. On that there was a message written that an English woman had been stranded. Stranded means was lost on the smoking rock. But he had no idea of how old that message might be. His father, William, said that smoking rocks means a volcano. So as there were no volcanoes nearby on the island, then the bird might have come from very far away. But Fritz was feeling that someone needed his help. So he did not stop his search for the woman. So before returning home, he wrote a message on the rag and tied it to the bird's leg and watched the bird fly away. The message that he wrote on that rag was that whoever receives my message, do not worry and you will be helped soon. One day, Fritz was successful in finding the woman, whose name was Jenny Montrose. In the beginning, she was feeling very shy, but soon she got used to living with the Robinson family. Children, let's read the further part of the story. One day, they saw a ship which had laid anchor. An encampment had been set up on one of the smaller islands. After checking the people through their spyglass, Fritz and his father decided to announce themselves after they had returned home and cleaned it up. They did not want the crew to think they were savages. The next day, Fritz and his father met the captain and told him their own history as well as Jenny's. To everyone's surprise, it had been Jenny's father who had inspired the captain's search. He believed his daughter, was still alive. After 3 years, the captain had decided to attempt to find her. With a burst of celebration, the family, passengers, and crew of the British vessel headed towards New Switzerland. Everyone was amazed by the prosperity and good health of the survivors. So, children, let's start with the explanation. One day, they saw a ship which was anchored. There were a group of people who made a temporary place to stay there, in another island. Fritz and his father watched them with their spyglass and then returned home and decided that they will not hide, as they did not want the crew from the ship to think that they were cruel. The next day, Fritz and his father met the captain and told him their own history as well as Jenny's story. But surprisingly, the captain was searching for Jenny, as her father believed that she was still alive after 3 years. That is why the captain was searching for her. Now, as everything was solved, they all were very happy. All of them travelled back to New Switzerland from that small island. Everyone was amazed with the kind of house and the good health of Robinson family. Children, let's read ahead. As the day ended, the father realized that decisions must be made about who wanted to stay on the island or return with the ship. Elizabeth and her husband did not wish to live anywhere but on the island. They had been there for so long and had grown used to their life. Jenny asked if anyone would support her return to England. Fritz was the first to respond. He offered cheers for us, who were going to Europe. Ernest, on the other hand, wanted to stay on the island. Jack also decided to stay back. Franz, the youngest boy, decided to join Fritz in leaving. Franz wanted a chance to receive an academic education. Before Fritz left, he told his parents of his love for Jenny and his wish to marry her. The father had kept a record of all the adventures they had had on the island. He handed over the journals to the captain to be published. Then the ship departed. Children, I'll start with the explanation here. As the day came to an end, the father, that is William, thought of taking some important decisions about who wanted to stay on the island and who wanted to return with the ship. Elizabeth and William wanted to live on the island, as they had made a new life on the island and had lived there for a very long time. So Jenny asked if anyone would come with her to England. So Fritz decided that he would go to England. He also cheered for everyone who was traveling. Ernest and Jack decided to stay on the island. Franz, who was the youngest boy, decided to join Fritz in leaving the island, as he wanted to receive formal education. Before Fritz left, he told his parents that he loved Jenny and he wanted to marry her. The father had kept a record of all their adventures. He gave that book to the captain to publish it. Then the ship departed. So children, with this we complete with the chapter. I hope you understood it. Let's have some revision based on the story. What was the solution for brighter light in the cave? A bamboo pole that would reach from the floor to the ceiling was fixed, and a large oil lamp which they had rescued from the ship was hanged. This was the solution. What was the change over 10 years? Over 10 years, the young boys grew as young men, and their parents were very proud. They called the island as New Switzerland. Last question. Who was the victim and how long had she survived? The victim was a young woman, Jenny Montrose, and she had survived for 3 years. So children, with this we complete our today's session. I hope you enjoyed the chapter. I would ask you to read the whole chapter again and understand it better. I'll see you again in the next video. Take care.